Hi, I'm Chris Hussey. I'm the marshal of the actual play podcast, The Adventures of Young and Holt, and you're listening to and watching Legends of Tabletop.
Hello and welcome to the Legends of Tabletop podcast. I have on with me Chris Hussman tonight. Or Chris Hussey. Geez, I screwed it up already. Oh my God.
That's all right. I've been called worse, so that's quite all right. It's actually Hussman is sort of an adopted nickname I got when I got one of my first jobs. And so it has just kind of stuck as a relatively reasonable and nice nickname, I guess. I mean, like I said, I've been called worse, so this is all right.
And hopefully all this recorded because I just got the live notification. So
I can do it again if you want. I mean, that's I don't have any problem with that.
Let's do it again. We'll start it. If you guys already halt. Oh, wow, this is going to be really. I'm not even drinking or anything. We're going to start over from scratch, and I'll re-intro the show, and then, this is video. This is archival footage now. We'll clean it up in post. So go ahead.
Hi, I'm Chris Hussey. I'm the marshal for the actual play Deadlands podcast, The Adventures of Young and Holt, and you're watching and listening to Legends of Tabletop.
Hello and welcome to the Legends of Tabletop podcast, part 2.
Yeah.
I have Chris Hussey with me tonight. How's it going, Chris? How you doing?
I am doing pretty well, actually. Today was a relatively good day, and although it's snowing like a banshee outside right now, so
is it?
Yeah.
How much snow do you guys have up there right now?
Oh man, you can ask me for real numbers. I'm just gonna say like a lot. I mean, it's not like we've got like feet of snow. Right. But we definitely, I would say, at least here in Anchorage, we've got at least a foot, if not 2 feet of snow. So it's actually, we've been going through quite a cold snap. It's just now, within the past couple of days, gotten to out of single digits. So it's been, it was cold like that before New Year's. So we've been doing this for a while. So that's a welcome change.
Yeah. Well, I know. I guess it depends. Like everybody thinks Alaska's just cold, like all the time. I guess depending on where you're located, so I guess the winter is not necessarily horrible in certain areas, right?
No, in fact, it's interesting because I grew up in northern Minnesota, in Duluth, and the winters there, at least as a kid, were much harsher than they are in Alaska. I mean, I remember specifically, I shouldn't say as a kid because this was as an adult, there was 1 week where I think the high temperature was 20 below, and this was in Minnesota. And Anchorage doesn't normally get that cold. I mean, certainly some areas of the state do, but Anchorage doesn't. In fact, this past summer, it was probably our warmest summer on record, and it was in the mid to upper 70s most of the days, which granted isn't really hot comparatively to some areas of the country, but for this area it definitely was. So
yeah, well, that's great. I was fortunate enough to be able to go on a cruise up to Alaska about 20 years ago now, I guess, and it was gorgeous the entire time we were there. Like I said, high mid 70s, low 80s. We were in shorts walking all around. Of course, it was like end of July, I guess, when we went. So like the best possible time.
It really is. The summers. I mean, I've only been up here effectively about 2 years. I've gone through 2 summers, but yeah, they are phenomenal. Just absolutely gorgeous. No humidity. And the temperatures are just super comfortable, and you get so much sunlight, enough to actually kind of drive you crazy in a certain sense. But it's it's phenomenal in the summertime.
Cool, very cool. So I want to tell a story. I guess I'm not sure how much you remember. Like, you follow people on Twitter, right? You like stuff and you retweet stuff, and you can't always talk to everybody. It's just the nature of social media. You make friends and whatever. But I guess it must have been 2018 was the year the Eagles went to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And it was end of December, and I guess the Eagles had beaten the Vikings in 17, 44-7 or whatever it was, getting the playoffs.
It was 41-7 because I was reminded many times by Eagle fans. Yes.
So as we were coming into 18 and the event, Eagles eventually won. I guess, the Vikings were going to potentially face the Eagles in the playoffs again, and they wound up doing it. And you posted like, hey, go Vikings, or like now's the time, or whatever it was. And you know, and again, we didn't know each other all that well. And I just posted like a meme of an eagle kind of like peeking around the corner. And you were just like, oh, what? You know, Eagles fans eating shit. Don't start this 41-7. I'm like, oh shit, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. I'm like, backpedal. Hey, but like, you know, it's okay. It's all right, you know.
Yeah. And that's, okay. So, to go back, I mean, we had, that was the year we had the Minneapolis Miracle. And, I mean, literally, I remember watching that at home and it happened. And I stood up and I'm cheering and I get tears in my eyes, and I'm telling my daughter, I said, stuff like that always happens to the Vikings. We never get to do that. It's just because this team is just nothing but heartbreak. And so then it happens and we're like riding high and it's like, okay, we're going to go into Philly and we're going to dominate. It's going to be great. And they go in there and then, like, as they typically do, and they certainly did this year, they do not show up for that second playoff game and they just got trounced. And, in retrospect, I would have been okay with them losing had the game been close, but they just got their asses whooped by the Eagles. And it was just so, and then to see that, and it's like, what? You just rage trigger and, you go after it. But yeah, the good that came out of that was, we got to know each other, and then we accepted each other's differences.
Yeah. We even wished each other good luck this year in the playoffs.
Absolutely, and on top of that, I actually even meant it. Because like my sister's a Packers fan, and so like she'll text me good luck, on game day, and I will text her back. And I love my sister, but yet at the same time, it's like I don't fully mean it. It's like I want her to be happy. I don't want the Packers to win.
Right? Not at the expense of the Vikings.
Exactly.
That's funny. Yeah,
I love how we're talking about weather and sports on a game thing. This is, I mean, seriously, this is great. This is so good. I love it.
Well, these are typically just kind of like BS sessions, so we kind of meander.
Right on.
But yeah, I know the feeling as a Philadelphia fan, because we're like the the bridesmaid at every sporting event. It seems like, and it's punctuated. Like every decade, we'll get something.
Yes.
So the Eagles won. I'm happy. I could die now. Like, it's fine. We won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to do this in the middle of the thing. I'm going to have to edit this out. Let me pause for 1 second because my kid is staring at me ominously out of the shadows.
I just need to get index cards. That's it.
Well, go get them. You don't have to stop me for that.
I don't want to, like, run across
Just run across the screen. Nobody's paying attention. All right. So are you going to watch Super Bowl now that the Vikings are out? Or
I probably will. We, family tradition wise, we've always had one where, regardless, we would always, that was kind of, not that our family was like this big health nut family, but we'd have a family Super Bowl party because nobody else really in my family gets into watching football. But when it comes to Super Bowl, they'll love to watch the commercials. And we decided, okay, so my wife and I said, let's wrap this around. We'll cut the brakes on this, and we'll just have all kinds of crap food, and crap sweets and all of that kind of stuff. And so we turned it into this family tradition / event. And we did that for years. Every time the Super Bowl come around, it was junk food day. And so we would, what are we going to have? And we'd write it all down. And so we'd go shopping and bring it in. And, of course, then we always would get more. It was kind of like almost like a second Thanksgiving, but just with bad food. And so you would, you'd have junk food left over for several days after the fact. But, so it turned into this fun kind of thing. So this year, I mean, now since all the kids are basically adults and have moved on and stuff, and we still kind of do it, but it's not nearly to the same with the same level of enthusiasm. So I probably still will watch, but probably more for the commercials.
Yeah, I usually do too. And last year they were terrible. On Sports Talk.
Yeah, they have been though. The last couple of years they've been really terrible, and what really kind of aggravates me more than anything when it comes to that kind of stuff is like the following day, everyone, every news show has like, these were the best commercials for the Super Bowl. And those frickin' Budweiser Clydesdales always make the list. And I do commercial production for a living for real life. And honestly, it's like, okay, yes, they're very nice, but they're really not, it's really not that great of a spot. It looks pretty, but you can't just put horses in a spot and just expect everybody just to fall in love. Puppies and dogs, yeah, maybe, but horses, no.
And not cats, because cats are assholes.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, cats, yeah, no kidding. Well, cats would just, although with one exception, there's one exception to that, and that was the cat herder commercial. This was from years ago. That one was good. That one was very good.
I can say that because I am a cat person. We have 2 of them running around here somewhere. So
okay, good. Then I don't feel bad about saying cats are jerks.
It's true. They've earned their reputation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's circle back around here. So, were you a D&D first guy? What was your first RPG that you ever?
Yes, I was. I was definitely part of the Redbox crowd. I spent several months in 1983 looking at certain pages within the Sears wish book, and it wasn't the ladies' lingerie pages. This was the as most teenage boys, teenagers my age would do, but it was the D&D page where they had the game and they had like the accessories, even had the funky like electronic D&D games stuff. All of that was that's where I would come home from school or whatever, it'd be on the weekends, and I'd flip. I'd look at the Star Wars figure stuff, and then I'd go look at the D&D stuff, and I just
blue snaggletooth.
Yeah, man, right. And then they had in the Sears one too. They would have like they'd have the specific play sets, but then they have like the Sears exclusive Star Wars figure play sets. But yeah, so the red box was there, and that was what I asked for, and so I got it for Christmas, and then unbeknownst to me, one of my neighbors, and he and I we would play Star Wars all the time. Either live action or with figures or whatever. I'd go over his place or he'd come over mine. But he had also gotten the red box that year, and I didn't know that, and he didn't know that I had gotten it. And so, like 2 good players at the time, he and I conspired, and we made the other neighbor kid be our GM.
Nice.
So we're like, here, you're gonna run us through this adventure, and he. He kind of figured out how to do it, how to run it, and we made our characters. We ran through it, and things just kind of took off from that point. Although I do have to admit that, in the red box, they had that solo adventure to kind of show you and illustrate to you how this is generally how a game would go. And they even had the pages or the little pieces of art where the map, and here you could draw out the map, and here's how you could add. But I screwed that map up. Because I couldn't figure out, because he would go here's this picture of this section of the map that you could see with your torch or whatever, and then you'd go on to the next section, and I was not smart enough to figure out exactly how where one ended and the other began, and so my map just looked ridiculous and completely wrong. And so then of course I go over to my friend's house, Shane, and his map was pristine and it was perfect. And I'm like, how did you do this? And he's like, well, it really wasn't that hard. And he showed me. But from there we played the box D&D for a long time, and then eventually got into first edition. And then from there, that's when, after first edition, we did that for a while. We started to branch out into a number of games, and I played Twilight 2000 for a while, which is great. Absolutely love that game. And then went into, that's where I also got into Battletech. And then it was Shane who introduced me to both of those games, actually. And yeah, of course, Battletech, then that's where I really started to go off the rails as a gamer. That one sucked me in. Yeah, big time.
I've got a couple of box sets right on the shelf.
Yeah, good man. Piece of uninteresting trivia, speaking of Twilight 2000. My character that I made in Twilight 2000, his name was Ernest Wick, and I kept that name, and he is the narrator for Young and Holt, and I decided to adapt that name for the podcast. So there's your piece of an interesting trivia for the day, which
That's
probably
very
will
cool.
be several when it comes to me, but yeah.
No, it's definitely cool. Yeah, sometimes stuff like that just sticks with you for whatever reason, whether it's a first character or, the first time you played this type of character or this game or whatever, like it just resonates.
Yeah, and speaking of first characters, that was like I took my original D&D character that I had made and converted him over to first edition when we started playing, and then just kept playing him for years. Just absolutely, love that guy. He got up quite high in levels, and it was very, you're always very pleased with those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. You pulled the Vin Diesel.
Yeah, right. That's right. That's very true. My gosh, I didn't even think about it that way. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, you're rubbing shoulders. So at some point while you were playing, did you GM at those younger ages? In the early part to either give the other guy a break or just kind of like see what it felt like to hold the power of life and death in your hands?
Yeah, it did. And I can't remember exactly where and how I started. I mean, I know I did when it was our like core group of me, Shane, and the neighbor kid who we made GM. Eric was his name. And then we got together with a friend of Shane's. His name was Scott. And then I knew him in high school, and he and I actually got to be pretty good friends, actually. And we still communicate quite a bit today. But at some point in there, I did start running things, and I think I didn't realize how much I enjoyed it, but I started to enjoy that more. And I had I ran a D&D urban campaign for quite a while that was based on the city of Caher from the old Steve Jackson Sorcery Choose Your Own Adventure books. If you remember the second book in the series, that was I had that city. And as you do when you have lots of time and you aren't dating in high school and you have all this stuff, you take several sheets of graph paper, you tape them together. And I literally drew out every single frickin' building in that town. Nice. It had the city wall around there and the river and all of that. And I recreated to the best of my ability from looking at the book, the map of Caher. And I'd always lay it out when we game and do whatever we did. And but yeah, I just kind of kept going from that point, and was always more than willing to either run or be a GM if we do GM rotation. And I didn't mind not playing. It wasn't until I got older that I realized that the types of things I wanted to have happen to my characters, or if I was a player, like the real arc of a character that I'd want it to take, I was never getting that satisfaction. And I don't blame the GM. I really don't blame anybody for that. That was just kind of what I came to realize. And I think then I kind of more fell in love with being able to craft stories with characters in them that might follow certain arcs. I mean, I still was all about making sure that the player got the experience they wanted for their character. But I found a lot of joy and a lot of satisfaction in being able to just tell a certain story, or at least have an idea for a story, and then watch my players make it better, make the story much more entertaining. And I really I kind of really got into it and really just enjoyed it quite a bit.
So are you more of a GM now then?
Oh,
do you get to play often? As a player? I do
GM more. I don't get to play very often. And to the point where when I do play, it feels weird in a certain sense to me. And I suddenly feel a bit constrained almost in a certain sense that, wait a second, I'm only playing one person? What the heck is going on, And so having more, I like playing multiple personalities. When I'm at the table, I get very, very energetic. And so I think it's hard for me to contain all that in one character. So I think that's one of the other reasons too why I like GMing, and I like also to the improvisational nature of it, where I can throw stuff out and I get unexpected things come back at me, and it forces me to think in that creative way. I've really kind of gotten off on that in the last few years, and that's with the current group of players that I do play when I play online. I really get a lot of that from them, and it just, it's fun. It's fun to do. It's fun to see. It's fun to experience.
Right. And it takes a special kind of someone to GM to really delve in and appreciate that and really kind of key in on that feedback. Because it's, I guess anybody can run a game, right? You play, like you say, maybe you don't hit certain notes, or you feel like your character maybe isn't, pushed in a certain way or whatever. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, people are all going to game at different levels, whether they're players or GMs.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's, and I've also come to appreciate a lot running games for new players. Excuse me. I ran, there was it was really more of an anime con that had some gaming elements added onto it here locally, and they did a lot of D&D Adventure League, and I have no issue with 5e. I enjoy it. I've always loved D&D, but I really wanted to bring the gospel of Savage Worlds to this con, and so there was, on the first night there was me and one of the guys, his name's Dylan. He has written stuff for the Savage Worlds Adventurers Guild, and a great guy. He and I both were going to have Savage Worlds tables. We didn't have enough players show up, so I played in his event, which was awesome. And then the next day, it was essentially all D&D Adventure League
right.
all day. Excuse me. And I was this lone oasis of Savage Worlds in this sea of D&D, and I had a bunch of, and when I ran my event, I had a bunch of new players at the table, like brand new. They've never experienced RPGs before, and that was so much fun to not only introduce them to the game, because I really enjoy the game, but also then to just introduce them to RPGs, and here's what this is like, and here's what you can do. And they really got into it, and it was fun to see that. As I've gotten older, I've realized the importance and significance of getting new people into the hobby. And it doesn't really matter to me where they come from, but it does matter that they experience RPGs outside of, quote unquote, the norm, and I guess D&D in this case being the norm.
The default, right? I mean, that's the expectation from everybody. And you see that now, not good or bad or indifferent, but you see that now with a lot of the shows that are coming up, like D&D, especially with, fifth being still relatively new, is the huge focus, where, back in the day, like it was that and Vampire, maybe you had the White Wolf stuff, right? In the early part of the 90s. And there wasn't, and I'm sure there was, right? But like, in the consciousness of the thing, you've had those two, and that was kind of it.
Yeah. And it really, and when you get to show people what more is out there, even it's funny, just because like even in the last week, I've seen two different. I'll sit there and I'll look at my Twitter feed, and there's plenty of tabletop related stuff that goes on in there, but I've seen two different people kind of complain about apparently the predominance of D&D Twitter feed. I do not specifically focus on that hashtag, but they were just kind of expressing some unhappiness with a lot of what they're seeing. I'm assuming it was toxicity of some point or of some level, and they were talking like they were just tired of just that, and it was almost like they were giving the impression that they had no idea that there was so much more. You have the other essentially 99% of games that are out there with great communities, lots of support. The games themselves are fun. It's like And it's interesting to see people like that kind of come to that realization. Because I even replied to them. I don't know who these people were, and I'm like, hey, come over to the and you do the hashtag Savage Worlds. Like, you come over to the Savage Worlds community. We're great over here. We have a lot of fun. The game is great. We have cookies. That kind of thing.
Right.
So it is interesting to see that, and it kind of makes me think. Because you and I coming up through it like this, we've seen how often the editions have changed, just since 2000, when they finally came out with third edition. And now with it being so popular with fifth edition, I'm beginning to wonder, because we're getting to that point cycle-wise where the rumblings of a new edition should start anytime now.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes me wonder, is that really going to happen? I don't know. It's one of those fun things to conjecture about, but it's like, because there's so much now momentum going, it's like, do you really want to, switch?
Well, but they have the platform set for it, right? So they can stick with it. They have, Critical Role sponsored show and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you keep pushing fifth edition stuff out, but you also have Critical Role. So if you want to do a 6 or a 5.5 or whatever they call it,
mm-hmm.
you have that huge fan base to be like, fuck it, yeah, let's do it. It's more D&D.
And that's the thing too. I mean, really, from the other side of it, it could be even easier to get people to switch over because of that kind of stuff. That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask you this. And we don't get super political all the time, but talking about Twitter and D&D and the toxicity and stuff like that. It seems to me, at least on some superficial level, I guess, right? Because we're at the same age, we're both, old white guys. That the problem with that kind of stuff and the gatekeeping and all that stuff seems to be D&D focused. I don't know if it's because it's the oldest system, so you have a lot of carryover of the quote unquote old guard kind of thing. Like, this is I only play first ever and blah blah blah, and
right.
I don't know. It seems to be that way, right? Because you have the new narrativistic, push, that came, a number of years ago, and like just sort of opened up and blossomed into this larger thing, where you always kind of hear that circling around D&D. It's
my guess is that it does have to do, because it's the largest. I have to imagine that just the way laws of numbers and stuff work, there are absolutely probably some jerks who play, I don't know, here we'll pick on the Wendy's game, who play what was it called? Feast of Legend?
Something like that,
and then like absolutely don't want certain people playing this game, or even going back to like Twilight. It's like Twilight 2000. No, we can't have, girls don't play Twilight or whatever, I'm sure that stuff exists, but it just, because there's not so much of it out there, that it's not going to rise to the top. And it really, the whole nerd niches picking on other nerd niches, just that kind of stuff just drives me crazy, because it's like, are you forgetting what it was like to grow up and you getting picked on? Why would you turn around and do that to somebody else? Because you're doing the same thing to them that happened to you. And this, because it happened to you, doesn't give you the authority to do that to someone else. It's not, if anything, if someone is expressing a desire to play the game that you love to play, why not let them play? Yeah, it is very possible your play styles will not mesh. I have absolutely experienced that. Some dudes, I've even had my own group, it's like, the way this guy plays, that ain't the way I play.
Right.
But I don't want to begrudge him the ability to play his game, so I'm not, we might not play at the table anymore or together, or maybe this group is not working, but he still should be able to play. And
right.
so
right.
It does bother me when that kind of stuff happens, and you hear about it tangentially, and it's one of those, you shake your heads, because I think internally, we'd all like to think that we're better than that, because we all come from that picked on beginnings, But a lot of times we seem to prove over and over again that we're not necessarily, better than that as a overall hobby.
Right, and it's such a shame because tabletop gaming and board gaming and all that stuff is such a rewarding hobby.
Yeah.
So socially, you're sitting down at the table, or even if you're doing stuff online, it's such a a fundamentally social activity, and to tell people that they're not welcome in doing something. It's stupid. You see it in the Star Wars fandom so much with the new movies and all that kind of stuff. And again, we grew up with Star Wars, right? Like that was our Star Wars, and the new movies are different, and that's fine. And I may like them, I may not like them, but if you like them, that's great. Like, love those movies. I don't it doesn't affect me at all.
Right. Right. It's like you not liking something that I like should not, destroy my enjoyment of me liking it, and vice versa. It's just that, it doesn't, and your comments about it being such a socially rewarding thing, not to plug another podcast, but
plug away.
People should listen to the episode of Gaming with Gage, and I can't remember his last name, but I did remember his first name. His first name is Paris. If you want an example of the good, the legitimate good for humanity that RPGs do, listen to that episode, because the guy Paris, he uses, and I'm probably butchering this slightly, but he uses RPGs as a therapeutic tool for at-risk teens or antisocial teens, and he gets them to learn team building, learn to socially interact, and just also to, in a lot of ways, it's a very positive form of therapy. And he has seen actual results, and it's an amazing thing to listen to. It's a very humbling story, and it makes you very proud of the hobby and what you do. That we do for recreation, he uses it for benefit for other people. Unbelievable. Right.
If I could find it, I'll throw a link in the show notes for that, or if you happen to catch it, if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, and it kind of ties back into our sports talk from the beginning, right? So where it's still more or less acceptable to kind of, embrace that tribalism that we have, like I post up the Eagles, Eagles fan, right? And it's acceptable, right? And we kind of embrace that, and we, kind of live by that motto, and we wear our team colors and logos and whatever, but we try to eliminate that in every other part of our lives and be accepting and inclusive and whatever. So it's
I don't mind giving crap, if you get people who say, oh, Dungeons and Dragons is the greatest fantasy role-playing game ever created, and then somebody comes up and says, well, Earth Dawn says hold my beer, and then proves that it is indeed the far superior fantasy role-playing game, which it is. But get that kind of shit giving, that's perfectly acceptable, because it's a good-natured thing. And but yeah, once it moves beyond that step, then it's like, come on,
Yeah.
Earth Dawn, by the way, is the greatest fantasy RPG. Fight me. So
you're that guy at the table changed my mind.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. Speaking of one more kind of like a side story, you talk about the coolness of RPGs, and and I've shared the story on a couple other podcasts, but I love to tell the story about it. My oldest son and his buddies, when they were in high school, they wanted to do RPGs. And so we're like, okay, cool. So we did, I think at that time we were doing 3.5. So it's like, let's do this. And their experience with, role-playing games in that sense was effectively Oblivion. But why am I blanking on the larger name of the game? But I can't think of it.
We'll fix it in post.
Anyway, but Oblivion, it was the fourth version of that game. Oblivion was the name. I can't remember the rest of it. Anyway, it was the Fussroda game, whatever the hell that one is. Anyway, so their experience though with making a character and doing stuff in RPGs, it was all computer based. And when they like legitimately saw, when they came to, you could visibly see it on their faces when they came to the realization that when they're like talking to an innkeeper and they realized they could ask any question they wanted to and get a response, as opposed to 3 question choices, and then also realize that they could literally go anywhere and do anything. I mean, it was just like this. I mean, you could see the light bulbs on top of their heads going off, like, oh my gosh, this is like so open, and it's like almost like a real thing, you know, and they're having this conversation with this innkeeper or this person in the street or this town guard or whatever. And it just truly was like an eye-opening experience for them. And they, at that point, then like really got into it and got into the cool things that their characters could do. And that was just, it's a neat thing to experience.
It's cool to see that light kind of switch on, right? Because it can be totally intimidating to sit down at the table. You're like, what is this? The numbers and like, I don't know. So my guy kind of does the thing, and then once they kind of like realize what's going on and sort of slip into character, maybe slip into a voice, it's just.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. And it's just, yeah, it is. It's fun to watch, and it re-energizes me as this crusty old gaming veteran, and I you feed off that because you see their enthusiasm, you know, and you don't want to give them a bad game if you're running something, and so then in that, you know, in turn, really kind of juices you up, and so you just start throwing more fun stuff in there, and it becomes this great, you know, feedback loop of awesome, I guess.
Yeah. All right, so I have a couple of questions to sort of follow on that.
Yes, please.
So for individual sessions, how much do you prep for, and how long do you typically run for?
It's varied over the years. Within the past, we'll answer the questions in reverse order. So like within about past 10 years, my average session length probably goes for maybe 5 hours, 6 at the absolute maximum. And I think that has everything to do with age. And, you know, and we just, we get tired faster, you know, and it was just like, you know, so a quit time of 10:30, you know, that's good. You know, I want to go home. I gotta work, you know, in the morning. And as opposed to, you know, when I was younger, and it was like minimum 8 hours, you know, and if it's not 8 hours, what the fuck is wrong with you? So, what are you, sick? What's the problem? I mean, this is how bad I used to be. I would work, and I'll get to your other question in a second. I had a group that I gamed with at work, and everything was great when we all had roughly the same shift. We'd all roughly work like 2 to 10:30. So Sunday nights, we'd get done with the 10 o'clock news. We'd either game there at the TV station, or we'd go to a guy's house and we'd game. It was awesome. Then my job switched, and I started working the morning shift. So this is just so bad. I do not recommend this for anyone. This, and I'll get to Gen Con camping some other time, but which was the way I went to Gen Con my very first time I went camping. Horrible idea. Had a good time. Horrible idea to go camping. But so I would work, they still worked until 10:30. And so we'd all meet at the guy's house afterwards. We'd game until probably about 3, maybe 3:30. I would then go back to the station, sleep on the couch in the studio for about like an hour and a half until my shift started at 5 in the morning, and then get up and then work my normal shift on Monday morning, which lasted until like about 12:30, 2 o'clock, something like that, and then go home and maybe try and take a nap. But, you know, but my wife, we had 3 very young kids at the time. And so my wife wasn't necessarily always keen on me doing that kind of stuff, you know? So, so sometimes I get to nap, sometimes I wouldn't. But yeah, after about doing that for about 4 months, I was like, guys, I have got to stop doing this. I'm dying. I'm literally dying. This is not good. So, so as I've gotten older, the amount of time that I'll game has definitely gone down. Prep time, that has varied considerably. I used to be very meticulous with my prep, and I'd have massive amounts of notes and NPC stats and all this other stuff that I would spend a lot of time doing. And as time has gone on, I've lost a lot of that free time to do that. And so my prep time is kind of this jumbled mess of mental notes. Maybe I'll take an hour or two here to make some quick notes and go from there. And it's the situation I'm not necessarily keen on. There are plenty of GMs who are very good, who can think off the cuff and react and do all that kind of stuff. But for the type, which is great, but for the types of games that I run, where I like to have story consistency and NPC consistency, and I like to try and create a world that feels real, that kind of prep isn't working for me. And so I'm like trying to come up with a way to do it better. And I haven't quite figured that out yet, I guess. So yeah, I'd like to get to a point where I do have some minimal prep, but then I have an effective way to take notes afterwards. And I think I got a recommendation from somebody online where I think I may have found the answer, but I haven't had free time to delve into see if that's the answer. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
Now for the new campaign, or for the current podcast for the Adventures of Young and Holt, did you guys sit down together, have like a session 0, and sort of loosely plan out arcs for the characters? That sort of behind, like, okay, what do you guys want to do? What kind of characters you want to play? And then you kind of have that going on in the back of your mind as far as maybe where you want to see the story go, where the characters go, or is it a collaborative thing?
It's been a bit more collaborative. The embarrassing fact of this is the Young and Holt started as really like an accident almost. We had a group. There were 5 of us in this group, and me and Brent and Brad, I don't want to call us like the core members, because that's definitely not fair to the other 2 guys. But the other 2 guys, their life circumstances were in quite a bit of flux, and so they weren't always available. We still would game with them when the opportunity came, but they just weren't always available. And so the 3 of us were sitting down, and Brad has a very large collection of board games, and he has a really good X-Wing collection, and damn, we love playing X-Wing. And so we enjoyed doing board games, but all 3 of us were role players at heart. We want to role play. So one night after we had got done doing board games, we were talking, okay, so let's come up with an RPG that we can do whenever the other 2 guys are unavailable. And so we were ticking through things, because the 3 of us, we had campaigns prior, which we were all very happy with. We talked about what if we went back to that world, and maybe even back to those characters or the descendants of those characters or something. So we're like throwing ideas, and then I was just kind of like running through games in my head that I owned. And then I thought, I came on, like Deadlands popped in there, and I said, oh, you know what we really should do? We should play Deadlands. And so neither one of them had played it, explained a bit to it, and they were all like, yeah, okay, this sounds really cool. Let's do this. And so then I think it was after that when I think I had just started to enjoy some APs, and I thought, you know what, maybe I'll give this a shot. And so I said, do you guys mind if I record this? And so I took a recorder from work, I brought it, and we just started to record. They were all cool with it. And so we had that we did a session 0, which is an episode that is available. I think we picked it up part of the way through. Did we follow all of the proper session 0 protocol? No.
That's
we didn't. We had a general idea. I think we talked about what the characters certainly were, what type of people they were, but we didn't necessarily come up with a reason as to why were they together. They just, I kind of had a little bit of that in there, but I let that develop a bit more organically as they played. And as far as the arcs, we have talked at times, where do you see Joshua ending up? Where do you see Porter ending up? But we've never we've never really nailed anything down hard. Like, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. And it's been, I've been, despite that, and I'm kind of glad that we didn't in a certain sense, because I think that makes it a little bit more real. And I like, I run the game, but it's those two guys who make the game really what it is. They're extremely good role players, and they're all, and of any group I've ever had, the level of trust that the three of us have with each other is, I've never experienced that level of trust. They know that I'm certainly going to put them in danger, but it's not going to be anything that if they're not creative, they can't escape, or if they're creative, they can't escape. And they throw me like proper curveballs. Like they're pitching to me, not to try and hit me with the baseball. They may want me to strike, but they may also want me to hit a home run. And so and it has just worked really well together. The whole, for those who do listen, the whole thing with Regina the Red came when one of them just played a plot twist card. I had not planned for this at all. The only thing I had planned was that Porter might recognize one of the names, and that was about as far as I'd gone. And then all of a sudden it turned into this former love interest, this whole backstory, and all of this stuff that developed in there. It's one of the better parts of the overall campaign.
That's where I am right now.
Oh, are you really? Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for listening. And second, I will not tell you how it ends up. But
I got through that part. They're leaving Fargo.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Yeah. And and even with the plot twist cards, I will fully admit, when Brent presented them, he's like, "Hey, we should try these cards." And it took him a second. It took me longer than a second to like fully understand exactly what was going on here and what he meant. But I reluctantly said, "All right, okay, let's give it a shot." I was very skeptical, and it became one of the best decisions we ever made for the game, because they have a bit more agency, and it serves as great inspiration, and it's something I wish that Paizo had. I wish they hadn't stopped printing them. I wish they still had it as a product, because it's an amazing product, and it's worth if you can find a set, it's worth the investment, because it can work across games. We don't use Pathfinder rules, and they do have like little game mechanics in there. We just ignore that part, but they're wonderful little keywords and things, just things to kind of take stuff in a certain direction, and if you're all willing to get into it, then it works.
Yeah, and they were used with great effectiveness all throughout that Fargo arc.
Oh yeah,
by all the players. Yeah,
they really have been, and it's something that I know that if I ever sit down with another around the table group, I do plan on using with them, because they're fantastic.
Yeah, very cool. You're talking about trust with the players and all. Do you think that's a function of, and I'm sure it's multiple things, but the size of the group? Just one GM, two players is a very tight, cohesive. When everybody buys in, it's real tight. Our Day Trippers game is like that. We started with 3, we dropped down to 2, we're coming back up to 3 as of the last episode, and it's just such a tight, real bleedy game. Like, it's just everybody's very open to what's happening, and I think for me at least, it feels like it's a function of the size. If you have 6 people or 5 people, not that you're not comfortable with your friends or whatever, but like, everybody's vying for a little bit of screen time, and maybe this person's on their phone because nothing's going on for them right now or whatever. But when you only have 2 people, like, you're in it.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. It is, everyone's there, everyone is paying attention, and it's a really interesting dynamic, where you can really get into some great depth all around the table, and it's so good. Like, it's so good that way. And it's completely different than when, like my son's group that I'm doing right now, there's 6 players, and you can only get so deep when you've got that many. And you're right, you got all these people that you want to give the spotlight to, but you may not necessarily be able to do that as much. But yeah, it's I've never done a group just 2 players before, and it's a fun size. I agree.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Our Day Trippers game is my most favorite game I've ever played in. And it's just, and it's a lot of fun. And I think it's because of that.
Is it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's, I think because it affords you the time because like the spotlight can shine a little bit longer. And yeah, if everyone is, you kind of, like you said, you're forced to pay attention, but then that, really creates that investment.
Yeah. It's because of the podcast, right? So like I'm in all the things, right? So I always worry as a player that there's too much spotlight for me, and I'm like, no, go do the thing. Like, hey, what do you guys think? Like, what's going on, right? Because you don't want to have that thrust upon you. Because I had somebody say at one point, like, well, it's your show, and I'm like, no, absolutely not. Don't ever think that. Like, that's not fun for anybody. Like, do the things,
Yeah, that was. Speaking of that, because I was editing. I just finished editing and released episode 41, and there is a scene in the beginning of that, and I had kind of forgotten. I mean, I knew this scene exists, but I had forgotten what had happened. And this was a completely player-generated scene between the 2 of them, and somehow I'm not going to say that I'm some sort of game mastering genius, but I just really kind of was more lucky in this sense. I thankfully got out of the way when they were doing this scene. Like there was a point where I did jump in with something that was appropriate in game, but otherwise I just like stay out of the way. And this scene goes on for like 5-7 minutes or something like that. And it's just the 2 of them going, and it's compelling. It's really good stuff. And I had tweeted about it just because I was realizing that the lesson being learned there was, as a GM, learn when to get out of the way from your players. If they're doing something that's cool, even if it's not advancing the story at the time, but it's cool and they're into it, dude, sit back, shut up, and just let it happen, because it's a fun thing to watch, and you'll appreciate it afterwards, because that's when like the real character development happens, and that's just so cool.
That's what I was going to say. It's all about the character development at that point. Then, and again, I enjoy that with the in all of our games, really, but really with Day Trippers games, because we've had similar instances where like, you're going, and you realize like, oh shit, Todd left. Like he's not even in the room anymore. He'll walk away, go get a cup of coffee, and we're just like back and forth going on about something or another, and it's just. Like we play Rogue Trader, and it's such a crunchy game, right?
Yeah, right.
And we'll go whole sessions and not roll dice. Like we just RP, like the whole group. It's just such a great group of people to play with overall.
That kind of stuff, when that stuff happens, that's what I really love about role playing games. Is that and I remember, seeing people talk about before, like 4th edition. D&D being like so tactically based and blah 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 and all that stuff. And yeah, you're right, Rogue Trader. Yeah, I listened to an AP of that one. It was like one episode, and I was like, oh my gosh, you have to make a skill check to breathe. This is incredible, but at the same time, when you have those sessions like that, when no, we didn't. We maybe rolled dice like 3 times, in a super crunchy game where you've got to do that kind of stuff. That I love that so much, because you're not letting those rules stop you from doing what you're feeling right at doing at that time, which, and that to me that's when the players are in control of the game and not the other way around. And I love and appreciate that tremendously. It's fun to do.
Yeah. Well, you're telling hopefully interesting stories and having a good time, and That's really what it's all about.
Yeah, it really is, and that's the other thing, And I was one of the times I was on Gaming with Gage, and we were talking about the whole idea of critical failure and rolling that one, and my attitude towards that has definitely shifted in the past 5-6 years to where oh, I rolled a one, something bad has to happen, to like, no, I rolled a one, something bad in a certain sense is happening, but at the same time, you're creating, if you do it right, you're going to create this you're going to create this thing that likely is going to be what everybody remembers from the session. I ran a one shot for my son and his group, and they were trying to do a dramatic task, and my son, actually, he happened to roll the one on his skill test to do it. And everyone was just like, "Oh my gosh, no, this is horrible." But then when I took what he said he was going to do, and okay, I'm going to turn this into a fumble, but here's how it all plays out. And everybody was laughing about it. They were having a good time about it because of his failure was so comical and memorable that's what really kind of stuck with people. And it's like that's how you handle rolling a one. The game went on, they still end up succeeding in what they're doing, but that momentary slip up was one of the good memories of it.
Yeah, when I used to listen to the Dragon Fisters when they were still around, I said to Jesse, because he when we were talking pre-show, he was the GM that I met when I was on Nerdbound, and I emailed and I'm like, dude, what is up with your characters? Like, they're the worst to themselves. Like, you don't even have to do anything. Like, I can't wrap my head around what's happening. And then the more I've played, I'm like, oh, I just love it. Oh, I fall off the building. Cool. What happens? I took a header, right? Like, I went over head first,
Yeah, it is. It's just that's the stuff that you remember more than anything else, and it's just so great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. How did you wind up getting involved with the guys from Fear the Boot?
That I was probably, I guess you could describe me as, I don't know if I want to say I was like an uncomfortable fanboy, but it was, I started listening to them, I want to say about 2006. That was when so they hadn't been around for very long. And I was just discovering podcasts, and I started, I cut my teeth on Dragon's Landing Inn, and I remember like cruising iTunes looking for what other kind of podcasts were out there. And I remember even specifically finding one that was somebody was doing, I think it may actually have been Jolly Blackmore, but they were doing dramatic readings of Knights of the Dinner Table.
I think I remember that.
And so like, okay, this is cool. But yeah, within Dragon's Landing, they recommended Fear the Boot. And so then I'm like, all right, I'll give these guys a try. And I found it, I started listening to it, and then I quickly realized, oh, these guys are Battletech players. Okay, cool. And so then I just started listening. I'd get on the forums. I became extremely active on the forums. And from there, I was just very, very active. And I started private messaging Dan, and he and I just began communicating. And then when they had some host shifting, and Dan had ended up, I'm sorry. I went down there, talk about a situation where you might never come back alive. Having never met this person, he and I interacted and everything. And then one January, I was like, hey, what if I come down? And they're like, yeah, that sounds awesome. We'll come down, we'll play games, we'll hang out, whatever. We'll even record an episode. Cool. So went down there. We recorded and got to know them a little bit better. And then it wasn't long after that they gave me a call. I think it was in 2008 is when I joined. And they asked if I wanted to be a host. I'm like, yeah, this sounds great. Let's do it. We got the whole setup going. And then I was on there pretty regularly for quite a while. And then I took a little step back after a number of years. just to kind of free up more time. I wanted to focus on my writing. You see how far that's gotten me. But I did that, and then I was on, semi-regularly, and then I was just kind of starting to do some of my own stuff, which I actually did want to, exercise some creative muscles in the RPG sphere. And then, of course, the move came, and then that was pretty much it. The time zones just don't line up for that kind of stuff for when they record. So I haven't been on in quite some time, but I still communicate with them often. And, of course, Young and Holt's on their AP feed with their Skies of Glass. Gun for Hire is going to show up on there here soon. So we all still communicate, and but they're great guys, and it's really as a podcast themselves, it's a testament to them, and with all of the host changes that they've had to be on as long as they are and still producing and still get as many listeners as they have, and the feedback. And it was funny, I just saw today, like the EN World or whatever top podcasts of 2019.
Oh yeah.
List came out. Fear the Boot was not on there. It would, that's fine, whatever. But the very first comment on that particular article was somebody had posted saying, "Fear the Boot is not on either of these lists." Like it was EN World's fault.
Right.
It on the list, and it was like no, I think it's a fan thing. And so if we didn't get nominated, well, we're not going to be on the list, and it's fine.
Right. That's funny.
It is. So, but it's they still do good stuff, and they're good guys.
Yeah, they're one of the OG podcasts. I mean, I've been listening to RPPR since 2009, I guess, and they're still going. I thought they were one of the first. Yeah, 2006. That's he's got them by a couple of years.
It's crazy when you think about it. So yeah, they've been in 2006, and we're 2020. That's 14 years. And yes, they've revisited certain topics, what podcast hasn't, but at the same time, they're still finding new things to talk about. And that's mind-blowing when you think about it, that you could have 14 plus years of content within a hobby to talk about, and there's really no end in sight,
Yeah.
But then again, you've been playing games for, 25 plus years. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's still stories to tell.
There's still stories to tell. We keep coming back, and we keep buying more dice. We keep buying more games.
Right.
It's nuts, man. It's nuts.
Did you ever listen to icosahedrophilia back in the day?
No, I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, it was a great show. I don't remember what the GM's name was, but it was one of those things like you listen to one podcast and they recommend another podcast, and you're writing down lists of stuff. And back in the day, I was listening to, I don't know, like 30 podcasts at a time. I'd go to work, plug in, work for 8 hours, go home, and, do it all again the next day. They had a great, like epic, campaign where they, went from first level to whatever, and then they were like fighting Cthulhu at the end. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
The explosion of APs and streaming shows like that it just fascinates me. Because I used to be kind of in that camp somewhat, where people would say, role-playing games are not a spectator sport, but yet here we are, and they're not only a spectator sport, but it really is. People love watching them. I even do it. I watch Wild Cards and Saving Throw show, and that is appointment content for me.
Right.
It's
no
crazy.
different than watching TV, right? I mean, like it's the same kind of thing. And you're getting better stories watching role-playing games than you're getting on TV.
In a certain sense, you are, and the level of interaction that you can have, adds an extra dimension to it. And it's almost, in a certain sense, it is tailor-made for you, because it's a game I'm interested in. It's a rule system I'm interested in. It's a universe I'm interested in. These people are good, interesting people to listen to, and then you look forward to doing that. It's kind of cool.
We have people watching us now, and we're not doing shit.
I know, yeah, no kidding. We're just sitting here talking, wow, this is amazing. And people are watching us going, wow, this is amazing.
That's funny. So how have the guys reacted to the podcast, or what's their interaction with the fans, if you want to call them that, or friends, which may be more appropriate?
That's a really good question, and it's I honestly don't know. I know that there are. Here's the thing. I can see what the download numbers are for Young and Holt, and I'm very pleased with those download numbers. The percentage of people who those download numbers that I've actually interacted with is incredibly small. I don't know is it a situation where it's a silent majority who just don't bother saying anything. They just like the show and they just kind of go on. Is it the people I interact with? Are they literally the only people who listen and interact with, listen and love the show, and that's it? And the other people, because the other people inadvertently download this and then promptly delete it out of their podcatcher. I don't know. But the thing is like I don't get a lot of interaction. I'm not necessarily looking for it. I'm always happy and surprised when it happens. And I always make sure that they do interact because, goodness gracious, you're taking the time to like actually listen to something I produce. Holy shit. All right. Yeah, fine. I'll talk to you, hi. So it always amazes me. Probably, and this isn't to take away from anybody else's interaction, but I think one of the most surprising ones is that in my son's group, one of the players, her name is Brianna. When we played, these are people who have not done a lot of RPGs. They've done it maybe for less than collectively a year. And so we were getting back into playing. We were getting ready to run this one shot. Jokingly on our group chat, I said, "Oh, and by the way, homework-wise, you're all expected to go and start listening to my actual play podcast for Deadlands." And we weren't even playing Deadlands. Gave them the website, ha ha ha. Well, lo and behold, Brianna actually starts listening to it, and she messages me or messages the group a while later, a couple weeks later, whatever. And she's like, "Hey, I'm really enjoying the podcast." And I'm like, "Holy shit, you're actually listening to it?" And she's like, "Yeah." She goes, "I'm on episode 8 right now." She goes, "It's really good." And I'm like, "Holy crap." And then, so not only that, she actually kept, and so it was partially because of the podcast, and she was getting into Deadlands universe and everything that's along with that. When it came time after the one shot for us to decide, they all wanted to keep playing. I'm like, "Okay, we can do this. What do you guys want to do?" We're going to keep doing Savage Worlds because I don't have the time to learn a new rule system. I said, "So here's a bunch of genres we can play in. Whatever interests you guys I'm cool with. Let's figure out something we can all agree on." Well, Brianna jumps in there and she really starts pushing for Deadlands, and she was like the driving force to get everybody to play Deadlands. Because once I started offering some more details on Deadlands, they're like, "Oh yeah, this actually sounds really cool." And so it was because she got into it listening to the podcast. And so now here we are as a group, we're playing it. And so that to me, that like the power of that did not escape me. I was really impressed by that. And it makes me feel good that, okay, my stuff isn't too wild as far as how we treat that universe. And somebody got enough enjoyment out of it that they want to try that game. It's like, oh, shit, this really is an effective medium for marketing games. That's so cool. Yeah. So, So I don't really, I don't get like I said, I don't get a whole lot of fan interaction. I love it when it happens. But it doesn't bother me that it doesn't happen, I guess.
Yeah. That's the cool thing about having the show is it presents with a different kind of access, right? So if it's just you and me on Twitter and I'm like, "Hey, do you want to like jump in and hang out and talk about games and stuff?" You're like, "Look, pal, I got shit to do. Like, I don't know who you are or whatever." But like, "Yeah, go Eagles, whatever, go get out of here." But like having a podcast, like, hey, I have a podcast. You want to come on, like talk about games? You're like, sure, let's talk about games.
Yeah.
So it's a really weird dynamic, right? There's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with having that, right? I mean, it's not like, yeah, I like to play games and, we record and we put them on the internet and that's cool and whatever, but like, it's an excuse for me to like hang out and play games, like the other stuff's just a side benefit.
Yeah, it is. It's weird. The number of, I guess, virtual or online friends that I've made is through gaming and through the ability to either go on podcasts and talk or in Discord channels for podcasts to talk is really it's wild. And odds are I'm probably going to be going to Gen Con this year and to be able to meet some of these people in person. It's like that almost excites me more than getting to play the games, because it's like, oh my gosh, we can finally see each other face to face. Of course, for me, the hard part is, as it has always been, because when I was like heavily into Fear the Boot and we go to Gen Con, someone's username is not always their real name. And like, for me to make that translation, it's like, I have a really hard time with it. And if their avatar picture, if they don't look like their avatar picture, which they never do, then it even weirds me out more. Like when I finally meet Carl Kiesler, if he doesn't look like Samuel Jackson in a clown suit, I don't know. I know it's gonna blow my mind, because that's how he was. That was his avatar picture on Google Plus for a long time. Well, I come to find out that he's just this average looking white guy, and he just, I don't know why he chose the Sam Jackson picture. Obviously, I would assume because he's a bad motherfucker, but to see him in real life is like, oh my gosh, this is what you really look like. This is crazy. But I don't know. It's one of those things you learn to get over it, I guess, or you make an effort to get over it.
That's like, so, when we were pre-gaming a little bit, I'm like, oh my God, it's so weird to like hear your voice and see you, because I'm just used to listening to the podcast. Like, well, that's such a weird disconnect.
Well, and now I'm going to go, because you're talking about your day trippers thing, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this actually sounds really kind of cool. I'm going to have to go now and start listening to this. And so now when I do this, I'm going to be, like, I've gotten used to the way you're talking here, and if you're anything at all different there, it's going to be like, wait a second, where is the disconnect happening here?
Yeah, it's funny. When I first met Neil, so Neil was the GM for Nerdbound, again, as we were kind of talking pre-show, and the podcast went away and we remained friends. But they went to PAX in 2011 and 2012, and I missed 11, but I went in 12, and we were messaging back and forth or on the forums or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be over here or whatever, like, let's meet up. And I'm standing there and I see this guy come like walking towards me, and I'm like, fuck is this guy? Not thinking like you just told the guy to meet you over here. And then he came up and I'm like, who? Oh, Neil? Oh shit. Okay. Because again, it's just so weird, because it wasn't his, his picture wasn't his profile picture and all that stuff. So like, it's a really weird thing when you actually do get to meet face to face sometimes.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's going to be very weird. And I know that if I get to meet the crew from Saving Throw Show, first of all, they're going to seem gargantuan, because it's like, oh, you're like normal sized people that I'm used to seeing, on a 8x12 screen or whatever. And then just it'll be like, oh, and you're also 3-dimensional. This is even stranger. So yeah.
Well, do you get to a lot of cons during the year? I imagine, being up in Alaska, there's probably not as many.
Yes, no. Since coming up here, yeah, it's been dry would be an accurate term. I used to go to a lot. I was heavily into con going. Well, I went to Gen Con a lot, pretty consistently in the 90s. I missed a few years here and there. And then in the 2000s, I got big into Living Greyhawk, and so I would go to a lot of smaller regional cons, which were fun. And then, of course, Fear the Con. But I didn't get to go to as many as I always wanted to. That was that's one of the gamers' laments for sure. But I've come to really like and appreciate those smaller cons. I think there's a lot of good there. But then, going and experiencing the spectacle that is Gen Con is also it's a wondrous thing. So, and it's been a couple years since I've been, so I'm definitely looking to get back there for sure.
Yeah. There is something to be said for the spectacle, but for me, I know for me, it's too many people. I enjoy a small con so much more because you see the same people all weekend, and
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, to me, it's more of a family vibe, and it's really cool here in Arizona. Like I have 6 or 8 small local cons between me and Phoenix,
Nice.
so it's great. Like there's always something going on that you can get to, and most of them are under 600 people, so it's real tight.
There's a lot to be said for something like that. A lot of positive stuff for that, for sure.
Our bigger one here in Tucson is RenCon. So I sat down to play a Call of Cthulhu game. Unbeknownst to me, we're talking after the session's over. Everybody from the table from New Jersey, which is where I'm originally from. I'm like, get out! He's like, oh yeah, I'm from Delran, and these guys are from like East Orange or something. I'm like, how crazy is that?
Wow, that is nuts. That's nuts. But that's so cool, though, man. That's it. Yeah. It really is cool. That's one of the things that always blew me away with some of the fear of the cons I was at. The distances people would travel. When we get people who come literally from Australia, I think we even had a guy from Japan once show up. It just blows your mind, and it's intimidating in a certain sense because. And I know for me, I always felt like, because I would go there and I would run games. I'm thinking, okay, I'm a host. Some people may indeed want to see me, but they're definitely going to want to play games. So I want to go and I want to run a game. I want to make it a good experience for them. That's my responsibility. But yet at the same time, it's like you feel so intimidated that I've got to be on. I've got to run my egg. I've got to bring my A game every single moment. Because I don't want to make it a crappy experience. If someone's going to travel thousands of miles, spend hundreds of dollars, and then have a shitty game, it's just oof. I would feel bad as a human being. It's like, thanks for coming to our con. I'm going to take a big dump on you. It's like no, you can't do that, man.
Yeah. Cool. What you said you guys were playing a lot of X-Wing. Do you do a lot of board games as well?
Not as much anymore. We did a lot when I was still in Iowa. We played, and they're fun. I mean, we did X-Wing. We had Brad had he had Kingdom Death Monster, which is just a great game. I love that game. I'm trying to think what other ones that we did. No, we didn't do that one very much. I think we tried a few. What is the one that takes forever? Is the Descent, the one that takes forever to set up, and then you might die within like the first half hour or something like that.
Oh, there's a couple like that.
It's got Cthulhu elements to it, but yeah, we would do that. We do a lot of card games at times just to like either kill time or fill time. We got into, for a short period, we got into Risk Legacy, which was great. Love that one. I didn't understand at first, like, how does playing one game affect the future games? It doesn't make any sense to me. And then we'd play it, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. We have to keep doing this,
Yeah. So
you're not. I actually won, which blows my mind because I normally never win at Risk. So dice never usually roll my way, or I'll end up getting stuck in the beginning trying to defend Europe because I don't have enough foothold in South America or Australia. So it's like, all right.
Right. Yeah, I picked up Risk Europe. My brother and I have been playing that off and on. So we'll do I found 2-player variant rules on Board Game Geek or something. So we've been doing that. But, even that takes, 2-3 hours to kind of wade through.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, he had Twilight Imperium, but we never made the plunge. I've never played it. I've heard it does. It takes forever.
Yeah. They usually have a table set up at RenCon, and I'll see people there in the morning, and then I'll still see them there at like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, have fun, I guess.
Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, really.
I guess you don't do a lot of Kickstarter stuff then?
I've certainly backed my fair share of Kickstarters. I've gotten lucky. There's only been a couple that I haven't gotten. And of course, just like everybody else, there are some that are being delayed. I'm still kind of waiting. But yeah, Kickstarter board games, I think I've done just a couple. One was probably a mistake to do just because we tried playing it one night and it was just understanding the rules was really difficult. And it was enough so that it turned us all off from trying it again.
That sucks.
So if I do back any Kickstarters, it's mostly going to be for role-playing games or particular supplements or whatever. So,
right, no, that's fair. Did you get in the last Pinnacle stuff, the Kickstarter that had going?
I did, the one for Lost Colony and stuff. Yeah, I backed that one. But yeah, I was there when they had the big, Savage Worlds Adventure Edition, the whole box set thing. It's like actually sitting right over there. But yeah, I did. I backed that, and that was the one I spent the most money on that Kickstarter than I have ever on anyone. I knew they would be able to deliver, and everything looked in there really cool. And I knew as a game system, this was one I was going to get a lot of mileage out of.
Right.
I haven't, sadly, yet. I've only been able to actually use the box maybe twice. But yeah, I know that will change soon. So
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like at some point, you just become a collector of RPGs and not really a player of RPGs.
Yep. And I know, and that was like we talked about at the beginning or before Mike says, like that's one of the things about me that I was trying to prevent. I was trying to actually pare down and get my games down to a manageable amount. Even if I don't, because like they're like, I've got a shit ton of BattleTech books. I'll probably never use them all, but I have a hard time separating those, like giving those ones up. It'll take a little bit of mental work to get beyond that.
My brother and I have a table set out in my garage right now. We got a full sheet of plywood. I bought the Hotwire Foam Factory, their little scroll table. So we got 3D terrain all set up. We've got like 4 lances of mechs. And we play with janky rules. Like we don't play like legit rules. So the games last forever. But yeah, I mean, we'll play a game. It'll take us like 6 months to play through a whole thing. And it's great. Oh, it's so much fun.
It is. Those large battles and things like that can be, because there were so many nights we would play BattleTech where it would just go. That was back when the 8-hour phase, you would just be slogging through the stuff. You didn't care because it was cool, and you're blowing shit up and it was wonderful. Now it's like, this is, I wish it went a little faster.
It's a lot of math. So how many did you move? That's all right. So that's +2, and then I ran. Fuck. Yeah. Wait a minute. How many did you move again?
Yes. Oh man, that's so true. So true.
And it's funny because so when I first, I didn't play Redbox. Like I didn't get introduced to all this stuff until like the early part of the 90s, and when 4th came out and we started getting back into it, I was telling my brother, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to start playing this D&D, whatever. And he was like, oh, don't ask me. And I'm like, do you want to play? Like you can play if you want. Like I didn't think, because he goes Rise Quads. He likes to go shooting. Like he played hockey. So he's always doing something physical. And I was like, sure, play. And he had a blast playing. He played with us all through 4th. Nice. And then, I'd moved out here to Arizona and he was here. So we started playing again. And then it was like, all right, we were doing BattleTech and D&D together. He's like, I can only do one. Like my wife is getting mad. Like I'm over your house all the time. I'd rather play BattleTech. And I'm like, all right, fuck it. That's fair. Let's play BattleTech. Because I'm going to play D&D anyway. Like it doesn't matter.
Sorry, I can get by without you. I can get by playing without you. Yeah, I'll just do it over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was a shock, and he had fun. His girlfriend at the time, we both started. We started playing again. She had a good time, and again, not like a role player, but she was super into it. Like it's just such a cool thing to see, and to have someone that you're close to like that, just be able to get in like both feet and just have such a good time doing it.
Oh yeah, it is, and I've had little bits of success like that with my kids. My daughter, actually, our oldest daughter, who played a little bit with me, she actually is in a regular group now with her and her boyfriend and some other friends. Nice. Which is good. I'm glad, even though her and I we gamed only a few times, I'm glad that she has taken it and is still doing it and gets into it. So good for her.
Mm-hmm. I've had varying success. with trying to get the kid to play.
Yeah.
We've done board games a little bit. We've tried the role playing, and it's like stops and starts. Like, let's play it. I'm like, great. And I get everything out. And I'm like, no, let's do it tomorrow. And I'm like, fuck, I can't do it tomorrow. Like, I got a podcast thing, or we got to go grocery shopping or whatever.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like that meme with you have my sword and my axe, and then the other one's like, the fifth doesn't work for me, or whatever. Yeah, love that.
It's the worst.
It's so true.
Especially trying to schedule. We were talking before. At one point we had 5 campaigns going. Trying to schedule, 5 different games with like 13 different people and like 5 different time zones. Oh, fuck. Such a nightmare.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
Oh, so what lessons have you taken away, from doing the podcast?
I've learned, actually, if there's one thing for sure that it has helped me a lot is in how I present, myself when I'm running games. So, because for some reason, I don't know if it's because, like I said, I get really excited at the table or whatever, but I really have a tendency to stutter, and not the stuttering kind where I'm like the word will get stuck in my mouth and I'll like and then say it. It's more of I repeat the phrase over and over and over again before finally getting it out of my mouth. And I was, so when I first started editing the podcast, I didn't realize I knew I did it, but I didn't realize how much I did it. And so, yeah, I had the whole ums and ahs thing that most people have when they do that, but that wasn't as prominent as me in how, oh my gosh, I'm sorry if you hear whining, that's my dog outside my door. But it wasn't as prominent as the whole stuttering issue. And so I took out a lot of that because I wanted to create a little bit better experience for the listener as far as that went. But at the same time, I was, taking that internal lesson, like, okay, you have to slow down just a little bit. You have to, even though you're ad-libbing, you've got to choose your words a bit more carefully, learn to be okay with those silent pauses as you go forward, because those things are they're much easier to edit out. And you can also use that to your advantage when it comes to like creating suspense or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I have actually gotten much better as far as that goes, presentation wise. It doesn't bother me to hear my own voice. Working in TV, you're going to hear your own voice all the time when you're recording stuff or whatnot, if you do it. So that definitely is one of the things. I've also become a bit better at descriptions and creating a certain scene or setting, and in trying to be better at engaging the 5 senses. You smell this and it feels like this, and you see this and you hear this, all that kind of. So in a lot of ways, as an exercise, even if you don't even release it as a podcast, I feel that recording your sessions and then going back and listening to them, and being constructively critical of yourself can improve your skills as a GM.
Mm-hmm. And as a player too.
Yeah.
I've been on a number of podcasts, and I always listen to things that I was in, and again, kind of be critical on myself and like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or the character really wouldn't have done that had I thought about it in the moment, and like trying to be consistent and trying to enunciate clearly, and like you said, be more descriptive and more engaging, because people are consuming this as a product for all intents and purposes, and you want them to be engaged with what's going on. Like I'm very handsy. I'm always moving my hands around and stuff like that. It's like if you're at the table, like I look at them. Well, you're listening to a podcast. Who the hell are you looking at? If there's 5 people at the table, it doesn't mean anything to anybody. I turn and look at so and so, or I whatever. So it does have to kind of be in the forefront of your mind when you're playing, for a podcast or for an audience, that people don't necessarily know what you're talking about if you don't follow through.
Yeah, that hold on a second, my headphones popped out. I gotta find that friggin' hold on a second here. This is great TV right here. Okay, there you go. Yeah, and you find certain phrases too that you realize are just, I don't know, they don't help at the table. Like I would say, and I still do. I would say things like, he kind of turns towards you and says this, and then I realize as I'm listening to myself do this, I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, he doesn't kind of do that. He does do that.
You're right.
Why are you saying kind of? Speaking of good TV. So it does. It just really helps improve a lot of things. And one of my Brent, he has his own group with his wife and a bunch of her friends or other coworkers, and he records them and he uses it now as notes. He records the sessions, edits them down, shares them within the group, but then it kind of becomes this establishment of canon, within the game, which is another good reason to do it. It's worth it to do that stuff.
Right. I started when I was still running 4th edition. Once we moved out here to Arizona, I started recording my sessions as well. I can't say that I went back to go listen to them, which was always the intention, because I would same thing, get all excited. I always made crafts and stuff for the table because I felt like my GM skills were not up to par. I'm like, oh, here, look at this shiny thing. Like, don't worry about what he says. Look, I made this thing. It's really cool, right? So I never went back and did it, but I did record for a little while anyway.
Nice. Yeah, it's actually, it's not a bad thing to get into. Even if you don't do anything with it to it, but listen to it for posterity's sake. It's a good thing.
Well, like you said, it establishes a canon too. Like if anybody really cares, if you use a certain accent, or if this NPC has a certain quest sort of thing, like as the quest giver, then you're consistent through the story. Because that's, I did a homebrew thing, and like it made me crazy because like I wanted everything to be logically consistent. Like, okay, it's a fantasy world, and there's dragons and there's magic and whatever, but like, man, if I said the guy walked across the street, like, why did he walk across the street? Like, what, like you just start going down these roads.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. So you moved in the last year, and so you had the table game. What was that transition like for you, and has it impacted the game, positively or negatively since the switch?
Both. It is the dynamic that we had around the table. That has had to adapt somewhat. I wouldn't say that it's gotten worse, but it's not exactly the same. We the three of us, we've adapted to the point where we're pretty strong with each other, and we've made it work well. It has worked better in the sense that the audio quality of the podcast has improved significantly, and my editing skills have got better, but the quality of the cast, because now we're all recording locally. So that is an improvement, which, it's unfortunate that it had happened in this way for that to be improvement, but bringing a mic setup for a 3-mic setup and all that would have been unrealistic to do, and probably also impossible. But so it's been kind of a mixed bag. I'm what I am pleased with, when I talk about the trust and the dynamic, is that when we sat down for like our first 2 sessions that we had to record online, they went really well, and I was very, very pleased with what came out of there episode wise, and I felt that we hadn't really skipped a beat in that sense. As far as like, ooh, that was a really weak session and it was all weird because we were online. No, we really didn't have that. That's actually, I've been very lucky in that sense.
Cool, very cool. And that happens after the Fargo incident, right? I don't think I've actually that break yet.
Yeah, the last session we had together around the table, story-wise, I think it concludes in episode 34, and that wraps up everything in Deadwood. what was, all the stuff that happens in Deadwood. So the new stuff, quote unquote new stuff, picks up with episode or issue 35. I suppose I refer to them as issues stylistically because of the cover images and kind of what they're based off of. So I should probably be consistent with myself.
It's a very cool conceit too. I like that thematically. It's very appropriate. The art is very cool. I dig that whole thing you've got going on.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I've been most proud about. Is I like the idea of looking at it and thinking that this is a dime novel of sorts, and and so having taking or adapting cover images from old Western themed pulp magazines has been. It's one of the nice style things that isn't necessary to see, but I like to see it. And the cover images for all those are just really, I don't know, I'm very proud of those, even though they have absolutely nothing to do with the game.
That is very cool. And Porter's always referring to his story, and it kind of plays into all that, which is all very cool.
Yeah, and there's actually, if people do listen to Gun for Hire when it comes out, I won't give everything away, but there are some connections that exist between what happens in Young and Holt and what happens in Gun for Hire, which takes place in the Deadlands Noir universe, which is in the 1930s. So I won't get into it because the podcast isn't out yet. It's close, but I'm looking forward to releasing this one only just because there's some cool other style things that we did just to kind of, I guess, window dressings around the podcast itself, the actual story, which I think kind of helped complete the experience, so to speak. Because I don't want to make it full on audio drama with just a little bit of role playing. That's Eric from Gamers Table. He does that better than anybody else.
Yeah.
But so it's somewhere between the raw recording that you would get with the guys in Fear the Boot and Skies of Glass and what Eric does. It's somewhere in that realm,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I dig a noir setting, and I haven't gotten a chance to play in one yet. So I'm really looking forward to see what you guys do with it.
Yeah, and it was a new thing for me too, and so that's been a learning experience. That has actually tested me a bit as a GM to try, and because it's a different. You're trying to create, or I look at it as you're trying to create a different sense of style, a different mood, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and I've been lucky enough so far. I've even had to gut check with the guys, and then Jill, who's our third player in this game. Are you guys feeling that this is noir enough? Because there was a couple sessions I remember I did where I did feel like things were a little flat, and they were like, no, it's not, I think you're being too hard on yourself. It's really not that bad. So, fingers crossed, we'll see.
Right. How much did you do any research going in?
Not nearly as much as I probably should have. I listened to a lot of slow jazz. And I did read up a little bit on what is noir supposed to be, what is the thing. Don't ask me because I couldn't tell you exactly what I read, except for that it's never a happy ending. But then again, Deadlands itself should never be a happy ending either. So it's sort of stereotypical noir. I always had it on okay, I'm going to watch some famous noir films, which I have seen some, but I'm not selling my podcast very well. To me, it feels like you would think it should feel, I think.
Right.
If you were to look
There's nothing wrong with hitting all those tropes. I mean,
yes.
It's noir setting. There are certain things that you expect are, phraseology or setting wise or, type, hard bitten detective, whatever. You expect, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yep. And I did some slang research. I did do that. And, I try not, even though it takes place in Chicago, I try not to make everyone sound like a Guido from New York. It's an overbearing Jewish mother. I try to have a little bit of variety in there. So.
Right. That's cool. When's the first episode going to drop?
Soon is about the best answer I can give you, only because it's interesting. Okay, so here's what ended up happening. I'll try and be as brief as possible because normally I get pretty wordy. we actually recorded a session. All four, or I think, yeah, it was the original four of us. We recorded a session, and it just wasn't. After we had done it, I did not feel good about it, and we talked about it a little bit. And we're like, nah, this isn't really that good. I said, why don't we? And there was also a several month gap in between when we did it and when we were going to play again. And I said, I'm not really happy with this. Let's kind of start over. And everyone was like, okay, that's fine. So they kept their characters. And so I approached it differently. Rather than have them all like be together, which is how I started the first session, I decided to do individual character introductions and just focused on each one of them briefly to kind of get them going, and then massage them to get them all together. And what ended up happening when I was editing this, I realized, okay, each one of these introductions almost feels like it should be an episode in itself. And so I basically broke out that session into these 4 episodes, and thought, okay, these will be character introduction episodes, and then figured out how I was going to structure that as far as a show presentation wise. So yeah, so like literally the first 4 episodes, they're all shorter. They're all like around 20 to 25 minutes. It's literally just a single character introduction and what that character's doing, and then it won't be until the 5th episode that you'll start to see them get together. So it starts a little unusual, but I've gotten, the first episode is complete. The second episode is about 95% complete, and I'll have the last 2 done hopefully within the next week or so. And then once I get all 4 of those done, then I think I'll feel good enough to release them, and then we'll see how things go from there. So.
That's cool. That's an interesting concept. Everybody gets like an opening vignette almost.
Yeah.
And then, you kind of like establish character stuff and scene and setting and all that. Like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And there was even a bit of a debate between us, like, okay, so who should go first? I mean, it's called Gun for Hire because the main private detective is Grace Gunn. But we kind of felt like, well, should she go first? Well, she's not necessarily the main character, but she is the one who's the show's named after. But then one of the other characters has a bit more action-y introduction as far as his presentation. So we're like, let's look at it as a movie. Usually there's a scene, you begin with a little bit of an action sequence, and then you kind of slow things down. And we're like, okay, so then Irving's character, he needs to go first. Then we can bring in Grace. Then we'll bring in the other 2. So that's actually how we ended up doing it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe I'll when we get done here, I'll shoot you I'll get your email and I'll shoot you the initial episode.
Ooh, yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Sneak peek there for you.
Cool, very cool. I want to sort of backtrack a little bit. We were talking about social media and things like that. What do you think of the influence of shows like Critical Role and things like that on the hobby in general? Good, bad, indifferent?
I would say my overall opinion will be good. I think that it would definitely it reduces the whole gamer shame quotient, so it makes it cool. It does bring new people into the hobby. They are bound to try it, so that's a good thing. You may run into issues where people might sit down at the table and they might expect to have a Critical Role experience. And that probably isn't going to happen. Maybe eventually you'll get there, but odds are your first 6-7 months of gaming is probably not going to be that. It's just not going to work out that way. And if it does, cool, good for you. But
you've been a great group.
Yeah, so that can be a negative to that. But I think like going back to what we were talking about earlier, there's so much more out there game-wise. If these people do decide to attend conventions and sit down at other tables with different games and have a different experience, then that again is a good thing because you're getting more people at these local cons, and which means they can survive, which is good. So, yeah,
more eyes on the product, more eyes on the hobby. Definitely is definitely a better thing.
Yeah, for sure. And at some point, Netflix or Amazon is going. I mean, Amazon already has the AFK web series on there, but at some point in time, the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon is going to come back by one of those streaming services. That's going to help. You're going to get a show, a Critical Role like show is going to show up on these services. You know, I mean, goodness, they have actual play podcasts on Spotify now. You know, so that yeah, so it's only going to that kind of stuff is only going to increase because it's a new venue for stories.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And you get these higher quality APs, you know, that they don't necessarily have listenership, but they have quality and they tell good stories. Man, you never know what could happen, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So and having the support from the game companies in essence by just saying, yeah, it's okay if you use our IP, you know, that helps a lot. You know, if Pinnacle was a jerk company and was like, you know, like stop using Deadlands unless you pay us, well, that means the podcast would probably go away. But
right.
they, you know, they're cool with it. They're like, here, can you at least say this? Yes, we can, absolutely can. We'll say this, that it's your property, and everyone's happy.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it's interesting. People, you know, D&D has always been sort of the touchstone, I guess, for things. But then when you get in and you do that for a while, you know, there is, like you say, this whole other world to discover. And maybe D&D, like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, this is neat. But like, wow, this game is amazing because it does all of these other crazy things that this doesn't do.
Yeah, right. Have you guys tried Earth Dawn? Oh my gosh, I thought D&D was the best fantasy game of all time, but no, it's Earth Dawn. This is amazing.
Well, we know it's not Rifts.
yeah, really. Oh, that poor punching bag of a game. I do maintain that Rifts can be amazing if it is run correctly. You know, but yeah, I know Rifts. It's whatever. It's you know, it's a fever dream, but that's, you know, that's fine.
Yeah, the setting, the wealth of setting material is amazing, but the actual mechanics are a little.
Yeah.
From my understanding, I've never actually played it, but from everything that I hear.
Yeah, I mean, I have not tried the Savage World edition of Rift, but I have heard actually nothing but good things about it. So there you go.
Yeah. All right, we should probably start getting an end show. We're pushing 2 hours.
Yes, we are. And it's I still need to eat supper. I haven't eaten supper yet. My dog continues to whine outside my door.
Well, so I'll ask you this by way of commercial.
Okay.
Did you get your coffee?
Oh yeah, I did get my coffee, and it was good. It was really good. I enjoyed it. I appreciate it. And as someone who eventually hopes to have a hobby coffee roasting business as a side gig, yes, it was good. I'm very envious.
Sweet. So by way of explanation, then I'll say Chris had ordered a bag of the legendary brew, and I was kind of wanted to pregame this and ask you before we got on, and we got distracted, and I'm like, oh fuck, we'll just go live, and hopefully you liked it. Otherwise, it's gonna be really bad.
Yeah, no, it was good, and actually, you know, if I'd have been, well, of course, I'd already burned through it by the time you hit me up to come and talk on the show. I should have had some like ready to go. But no, it was. I tried 2 bags, and they both were actually quite good.
Sweet.
Was it the legendary one? Yep. And then what was that? I can't remember the name of the other one.
Was it Night Owl Blend? Is that what you got?
Yes, it was Night Owl Blend. That was, it was good.
The Night Owl was my favorite before we started getting our own. You got to drink your own stuff, right? I mean,
absolutely.
So Birds of a Feather is our sponsor for the show. They're a small batch craft coffee roaster. They're roasted by Neil, who runs our Rogue Trader and Fear Itself games. And as Chris can attest, it is a very good brew. It's a nice, even medium roast coffee. It's easy drinking. It's got, I don't know, there's notes or whatever and shit. You got to follow the link. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'm not good at this part of it.
I made mine with a French press, and it was spectacular.
Yeah, that's what I do. I get the whole bean now. I was shamed into whole bean.
Good. And, you should be shamed into whole bean. That's the only way to go.
Yeah, and it is better. Like every time I grind, I'm like, oh, all the flavor and all the.
Yep. Yeah, it is. That making that part of the ritual is part of what makes the coffee so good.
Absolutely. And if you used code Legends10, you got 10% off your order, and shipping was free.
That's right, which I did, and it was.
Awesome. That's awesome. Larry, do you have anything to plug? Do you have anything that's going on? We know the new podcast is coming out. Anything else that's happening?
Yep. So youngandholt.com is where you can get access to all of the episodes and extras that we have for the Adventures of Young and Holt. And then Gun with 2 N's for Hire AP. So gunforhireap.com is what will get you everything that we have so far for the upcoming Gun for Hire AP, including a trailer, which you can see, and then a couple of little character bios as well. So that's plug-wise. That's it. You can hit me up. I'm on Twitter primarily. That is my social media of choice, and I am the Hussman on TheHussman on there.
And there are links to everything in the show notes below. So if you didn't catch that, just check out the show notes. You have links to all the things. Sweet. I should also mention, because this is relatively new, I guess, we do have our Patreon up. So if you're interested in supporting the show, you don't like coffee. I don't know why you wouldn't like coffee, but if you don't and you still want to support the show, you could throw some money at us over there. We do early release for the raw episodes. I'm approaching the point of synchronicity where I'm caught up to our current episodes. I've been trying to get like 2 things posted every week. We've moved to a post-show format, so we'll have our episodes, and then we do, sometimes it's a couple of minutes. We've had post-shows that have gone on for almost 2 hours, so we figured we'd make that a Patreon exclusive thing, that we feel like you're getting a little something for your money. And I can't say that I blame you, but I support a couple of people on Patreon, and I never go on Patreon to look at any of their stuff, right? Like, because so for me, like, that's not the... Like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter.
Right. You just want to support them because you like it.
Yeah. And not everybody does that, and I get it, and I fully appreciate that. But, we have that up there, so we have the extra shows and stuff for you to check out. So if you'd like to do that, we would appreciate it. And reviews for Legends, reviews for... Well, I guess for Fear the Boot, even though it's not for Young and Holt specific, but review Young and Holt, and it'll go up for a review on Fear the Boot, and that would be fantastic. All those things helps the shows get noticed in the algorithms, bumps everybody up, though they probably don't need the help, if I'm going to be honest. But do it nonetheless. It's nice to be able to get that feedback. People know that you're engaged, you're engaged with the show, and you're enjoying what people are doing, and, that is a reward unto itself.
Yeah, very true.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, it was a pleasure to have you on. We could probably do this for like 2 more hours, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, we're talking gaming, so it literally could go on forever. So it's a good thing.
Yep. We'll definitely have to do this again. We'll have to get you back into the rotation. Maybe we'll get you in one of our roundtable things.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. All right. Well, again, thank you for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure. I enjoyed the show very much. I listened. I started listening. It's fantastic. I love it. The Adventures of Young and Holt is a fantastic game. The players are great, and you are a wonderful GM.
Well, thank you very much. It's extremely nice of you to say. So, and you, I have to say, you, like I said earlier, you did sell yours pretty good. So now it's bumped itself up in my queue for sure. So I'm definitely going to check it out. Absolutely.
I don't know what platform you use. If you go to our SoundCloud page, there's actually playlists set up for each separate campaign. So
interesting.
If you wanted to just take a chunk out of that almost 500 podcasts that are up there, you can get them in little chunks.
Nice. All right.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody for checking this out, and we'll catch you next time.
Later.